What's going on, y'all? Attorney Tom here with another USCSB React. Today's video is titled Hot Work Hidden Hazards. As always, make sure you stick around to the end of the video where I'm going to assign my percentages of fault. Let's jump right into it.
On November 9th, 2010, a powerful explosion shook the DuPont chemical manufacturing plant in Tonawanda, New York, a suburb of Buffalo. A contract welder was performing maintenance work on a tank that, unknown to him, contained flammable gas. The explosion blew the top off the tank, throwing the welder to the ground and killing him instantly.
As always, remember, it's very important in the legal sense to classify what type of worker they were here. They said that the welder who was killed was a contractor, meaning they weren't an employee of DuPont. That's probably really important to the case. Obviously, this would fall under New York law. I'm not a New York lawyer, but you get the point. It's very important to classify the type of worker that was injured.
A second contract worker was burned.
The tragic explosion at the DuPont facility exposed weaknesses in how process hazards were analyzed and controlled. The result was the death of a welder in a preventable hot work accident.
Hot work accidents occur when workers are welding, cutting, or grinding near flammable vapor, and were the focus of a 2010 CSB safety bulletin. Deficiencies in the safety management of hot work were among the causes of the tragedy at DuPont.
Did y'all catch the USCSB's little jab in there? They said that this was the type of accident in which they put out a safety bulletin just a couple of months before this incident happened. Obviously, the USCSB is a governmental agency. They're trying their best to be neutral. That is just a polite way of saying the chairperson of the USCSB already called this incident a process hazard. What a process hazard is a hazard that probably exists routinely. It's probably a hazard that exists on purpose because guess what? Dealing with chemicals is dangerous. So you need to have processes so when you need maintenance or need to do things, you mitigate the risk.
DuPont's Tonawanda facility manufactures a polymer known as Tedlar, used in solar panels, and Corian for use in countertops. The process of producing Tedlar began with a chemical reaction to convert flammable vinyl fluoride gas into a slurry of polyvinyl fluoride polymer, or PVF, in water. The PVF slurry then passed through separators. Compressors recycled unreacted vinyl fluoride gas into the process, while a small flash tank released residual vinyl fluoride into the atmosphere. Finally, the slurry was transferred to one of 3 insulated holding tanks, usually tank number 3. Tanks 1 and 2 were reserved for slurry overflow. Tank 1 normally remained empty. On October 22, 2010, the Tedlar process underwent a planned shutdown, during which workers removed the asbestos insulation on tanks 1 and 2. Removing the insulation revealed that the agitator supports for the tanks were heavily corroded. DuPont directed contractors to repair the supports, which would involve welding and grinding on tanks 1 and 2. The hot work on tank 2 occurred during the shutdown without incident, but the repairs on tank 1 were delayed while parts were ordered. DuPont personnel determined that it would be safe to perform hot work on tank 1 after the restart.
Okay, so if we have our magic crystal ball, I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say the incident happened while they were working on tank 1 while the system was hot. Tank 2 was fixed while the system was down, and they determined that it was safe to work on system 1 while everything was going on, presumably because tank 1 never really got any overflow. At least that's what I'm guessing. Also, side note, asbestos insulation. We could make a whole video about refinery workers' exposure to asbestos. Asbestos was used to pretty much coat everything from the 1930s to basically 1986 is when, they really found out it was super bad. And when I say they, I mean the public. There are crazy documents showing that the makers of asbestos and these companies knew asbestos was really bad for years, yet they continued to basically poison everybody around. I'm getting sidetracked. This is not a video about asbestos. Let's keep going.
On November 7th, DuPont operators locked all 5 valves leading to and from Tank 1 in the closed position in order to stop potential slurry flow. The tank's agitator motor was also locked out. However, DuPont personnel did not block the flow of gas inside the overhead piping, or overflow line, that connected the vapor space of all 3 tanks. They mistakenly believed that flammable vinyl fluoride gas could not reach any of the slurry tanks. But the CSB investigation found that even in normal operations, vinyl fluoride was not completely removed from the slurry and was always present in the slurry tanks in varying amounts.
It was always present in the slurry tanks in varying amounts, yet they did not know that. They believed the opposite. The operators of the plant fundamentally did not have a grasp of the hazards that were present.
When the process restarted on November 6th, the flammable gas was able to travel from tanks 2 and 3 through the open overflow line into Tank 1. On the morning of November 9th, a DuPont technician tested the atmosphere above Tank 1, where welding would later take place. There were also 2 continuous air monitors in the vicinity. No flammable gas was detected.
No flammable gas was detected outside of the tank. What about inside the tank? The USCSB should hire me, and I will literally just go to refinery with my hammer and just, make people smarter. Knowledge hammer.
And the hot work was cleared to begin. But no testing was done to measure or monitor the atmosphere inside the tanks, where, unknown to the contractors, the flammable gas was at dangerous levels. Around 9 a.m., 2 contract workers began welding and grinding on Tank 1. The welder connected his safety harness to the tank's agitator support and worked on top of the tank as the foreman looked on from the nearby catwalk. At approximately 11 a.m., the welder was repairing corroded portions of the agitator support beams directly above the flammable gas. A hole around the agitator shaft may have provided a pathway for ignition. Welding sparks could fall into the tank, even as flammable gas might drift up.
Now, some people watching this video might say that this is some sort of design defect. Why is there a gap in this tank? And I would say that's a pretty weak argument, especially if you have something that has a lot of movement, such as this blade that's going to keep spinning. I would say that it's foreseeable that if you have a small opening, you assume that a spark or whatever something dangerous could be is going to get in. So you need to prepare for the worst at all times.
Upward toward the sparks. The ignition of the vinyl fluoride caused a powerful explosion. The force of the blast blew the top of the tank almost completely off. A flash fire erupted that consumed the flammable gas and quickly burned out. The welder was thrown to the ground, killed instantly from blunt force trauma. The foreman's face and arms were burned.
Okay, y'all, so I actually thought this was one of the more interesting videos because it shows an important concept. It shows that things can go wrong even if everybody thinks they are doing everything right. Here, the operators of the plant thought they were being safe. They thought they had safety processes in place. They thought they did the right thing. They shut down the plant to operate on Terminal 2. Yet, Terminal 1, they determined it was okay because they fundamentally did not know that there would be vapor in there. And even though they thought that it was completely safe, they did perform some level of testing to ensure the safety of their workers. But when you have a lack of the fundamental truths of your operation, and here the fundamental truth was vapor gas routinely made it into the first terminal. And when you don't have the correct foundation, the correct knowledge to lay the foundation of your plant, you cannot provide adequate safety assessment, adequate hazard assessment. And that's what happened here. And these sort of problems are extremely tough to identify because the foreperson or whoever is in charge is going to say, well, this is the way it's always been. This is what the operators of the plant told me. The higher ups at the plant are going to say, well, we didn't know. We've always done it this way and it was fine. So in order to combat this, plants can implement some form of independent audit. They can perform some sort of re-risk assessment from the ground up routinely, maybe once a year, once every other year, once a quarter. And for everybody who says these processes and regulations are overkill, well, tell that to the worker who was killed and the other worker who was burned on his face and in his arm. He thought he was operating safely. So with that said, I assign 100% of fault to the operators of the plant for lack of hazard safety analysis. All right, y'all, that's it for today's video. Talk to you later. Bye.
He's a catastrophic injury attorney who accidentally became a YouTuber. Attorney Talk.